All right, good day, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let us get this show on the road. All right, so it's great to have you all here for this is number 5 of our medical missionary crash course. Excellent stuff we've been learning all week, and I know you guys have been gaining tons and tons of value. So, with that being said, we are going to jump right into tonight's segment. Now, we were supposed to be looking at if we follow the pattern of the laws of health, abstemiousness. However, we'll be doing abstemiousness tomorrow as we have another presenter that will be doing abstemiousness and she's only available for tomorrow. So I will jump forward and we'll do rest today, and then tomorrow we will do abstemiousness. Fair enough? Excellent stuff. Now, before we actually jump into this thing, I want everybody to engage with me in the chat. Type one thing that stuck with you in this entire training, or one thing that you learned from this entire training that really resonated with you this week. So go ahead and type that in the chat. Let me get some of those comments read back, because you see, I'm teaching this thing, so I need to ensure that you guys are also learning and gaining tons and tons of value from it. So just type one thing in the chat, whatever small, big, from any of the classes that we have done so far that you have learned from the medical missionary crash course as we get ready to transition into rest. And guys, you know our motto, right? As you're typing, as you are in there typing up what you learn, and I'm getting ready to read the comments, you know we have to go over our mantra. We have our mantra. This is what you are going to be using as you go out and help people in your community, in your church, whatever sphere of influence you would be in. So let's go ahead now and bring up our mantra here, because it's very important that we get this mantra going before we actually begin. Once you finish with this training, guys, you're going to memorize. You are going to memorize, I assure you, this mantra. It's going to become part of you, and you're going to find that when you look at diseases, you're going to look at it through a new lens. You see, heretofore, we were looking at diseases from what medication we could use, or a disease as it is the ultimate state. So like somebody has cancer, well, that is it. We just got to wait it out. But now that we understand that disease came by a certain sequence, we now have the confidence that once we reverse the sequence and we bring this case before the Lord, and the person adheres to the laws of health, that we have a higher chance of them reversing the condition. Of course, we have to keep in mind that as long as that is the will of the Lord. All right? So some of the things that we learn here are what is disease. Okay, right, great. And that's the one we're going to be touching on right now. What is disease? So let's say it with me. I tell you, by the end of this training, guys, you are going to memorize this thing. You are going to know it like the back of your hand. So after the count of 3, here we go. 2, 3. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from the violation of the laws of health. And we looked at this chart. We saw the end result being disease. Before that came the system freeing. We saw those conditions that the system was freeing from came about by a violation of the laws of health. And so we are doing this week acquainting ourselves with the laws of health. We started with pure air. We looked at sunlight. Tonight we'll be looking at rest, right? And then tomorrow we'll be looking at abstemiousness. So now that we have that in place, now that we have the foundation built, we are now ready to jump into this training. So let's take a close look at rest. Now we have to think of it this way. Most of us here are familiar with our smartphones, right? So we all have a smartphone. You're probably watching me on it right now as I'm speaking, and you have gained tons of benefit from using that smartphone. However, that smartphone cannot be used indefinitely. After a certain period, whether it is a day and a half, 2 days, you have to plug in that smartphone into the electricity, into the charger, so that it can recharge to perform well when you need it. Now, let us think of it this way. Imagine this smartphone that you are using requires time to fully charge, 1 hour and 25 minutes. And you decide, listen, I need to use this phone, so I can only give it 5 minutes. I can only block off 5 minutes. Now, note what I said. I can only block off 5 minutes. Not what it needs, it is what I can only block off. So you block off 5 minutes, you pick up the phone, and you use it at full throttle. It goes down again, you get that warning light, you block off another 5 minutes, and it goes again. If you continually do this, what will eventually happen to that phone? You're ignoring that low battery warning. You're just giving it 5-minute increments. It requires 1 hour and 25 minutes. What would eventually happen to that phone? Let me hear it in the comments below. Right? It dies. Exactly. That phone would eventually die. Why? Because you put your needs, your desires, your conveniences above the requirements as laid down by the manufacturer. Right? 1 second. As laid down by the manufacturer. Right? So, when you put your conveniences above the manufacturer's requirements, what eventually happens? The phone dies. Now we have some things here that we just talked about. We talked about manufacturers, we talked about requirements, we talked about conveniences. Is it possible as human beings that we are putting our conveniences, the convenience of studying for our degree, the conveniences of completing our lesson plan, the conveniences of preparing work that should have been done at the office but bringing it home to finish it up, the conveniences of staying up and enjoying a late night movie because you think you deserve it, above the manufacturer's requirements? Now, what are the manufacturer's requirements? We are going to jump into that tonight. So with that being said, let us look at some of the benefits of rest. Just from that story, you will realize that rest allows your body to recharge and renew itself. You see, when you go to sleep, when you rest, a couple things are happening. Some things, waste products are being removed, repairs are being done, enzymes, why enzymes important? Enzymes are needed for the breakdown and absorption of food. So if you find yourself having a lot of indigestion, if you find yourself not able to absorb the nutrients, and how do you know? You are doing or eating what you're supposed to be eating, but when you do your tests, you are finding out that you are mineral and certain vitamin deficiency. It could be that these enzymes that are supposed to be replenished are not being replenished, so the food is coming in but they cannot be used or utilized, right? And of course, energy is restored. And being from the fitness world, those clients in fitness will tell you that rest helps with muscular repair. So you are training hard, you are trying to get in shape, and you are eating right, you're hitting your protein goals, you are hitting your workout regimen, but you are not seeing results. The first place we tend to look at is the rest. Because if the rest is off, and I like to put it this way, imagine you are baking a bread. I normally use cake, but we'll use bread for this one. Imagine you are baking a bread. You first of all have to get the ingredients together, right? You have to get the raw ingredients together, the flour, the yeast, whatever it is. You got to get them together. And then you got to mix them and leave the bread to set for a bit, right? Now, if you just went straight ahead and eat that bread, nothing beneficial would happen to you. You have to then take that bread and leave it, here's the key word, undisturbed in the oven so that it can now come together. Now, you have put in all the work from before. You have gotten the right ingredients, you have mixed them together, you have allowed the yeast to activate. Now you have to put the bread and leave it undisturbed to get its shape and to become palatable. It's the same thing with your body. You can do all the exercise in the world, you can eat diet from a textbook, but if you are not resting, you are not allowing the ingredients and the mixing, which will be the exercise that you've put together, to harden and the body to renew itself. Now, there is also, rest was such an important thing, right? Rest was such an important thing that the Lord dedicated in creation. And if you want to understand how the body operates, you must always go back to the manual. You must always go back to the manufacturer's instructions, right? Now, we know that God is omnipotent, which means He is all-powerful. So the last thing He needs is rest. So if He is omnipotent, if He is all-powerful, why did He dedicate a whole day to rest? Because in His love, He realized that as human beings, we need some time to set aside our daily labors and rejuvenate. You see, rest not only rejuvenates us physically, it also rejuvenates us mentally, emotionally, and most importantly, spiritually. Right? So I thought I'll just put that out there as we are on the topic of rest, because that is very important. Now the question would come, what about if I am in school and I have to, they tell us to burn the midnight oil so that we can perform good. What about cases like that? There must be some level of exemption, especially for our students. Now, for us to really understand this thing, let us see what is said in the counsel. So I'm going to bring it up here, and this is very important. This applies to students as it does to teachers. Yep, it applies to teachers as well. So there is no excuse here, so to speak. So let's see what it says here. Let me just match the screen to it. Alright, so read it with me. Let's go. 2, 3. No student should form the habit of setting up late at night to burn, what is that word? The midnight what? Oil. And then take the hours of the day for sleep. If they have been accustomed to doing this at home, they should seek to correct their habits and go to rest at a seasonable hour, and then rise in the morning refreshed for the day's duties. In our schools, the lights should be extinguished at 9:30. And this is taken from Christian Education, page 124, semicolon 1. Right, there we go. Right? So, there you have it right there. If there should have been an exemption for students because they have to study late, that they could stay up and rest. Well, here's the thing, right? You have the daylight hours in which to perform. And the fact that you study late in the night, in fact, they actually did something where it's called brain elasticity, right? And they found that students or humans, the test subjects that they were done on, who got sufficient rest, who went to sleep and had the sufficient rest, their brain was able to retain more information, right? So their brain was able to expand to the demands that was given to them. Those who reduced their rest, their brain elasticity, or the ability to hold and retain information, was greatly diminished, right? So we see here that rest is extremely important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the timings as to when we should go to sleep and why those timings are important. Now, some of the other side effects of not resting is that, and this is very important again, you will actually, you heard this 3 times. You heard it in pure air, you heard it on Tuesday night on sunlight, and you're going to hear it again. Lack of rest lowers your immune system, right? Lack of rest also lowers your concentration. Now, as an airline pilot, we have very strict rules when it comes to rest, because most of the accidents, most of the aviation accidents in our industry, most of them, right, not all, but majority of them, is always linked to pilot fatigue. And when they go back and look at the lifestyle or the hours prior to the accident, the pilot was either commuting, so coming from one flight to another, or coming back to work, and as such they had reduced rest, or they were up late the night before, and it always comes down to a reduced rest. And remember, we talked about the brain elasticity earlier. It also impairs your performance, your ability to make great judgment. So in the airline industry, we actually have laws in terms of how much rest you have to have before going and complete the next flight. And if you break those laws and are found guilty, you could actually be in prison for attempted manslaughter. So that is how serious these regulations are, and that is how serious they take rest in that industry, right? Now, some of the things that you can have from impaired rest, and this one I know for sure, is that your tolerance will go down, so you will tend to have a quicker temper, right? You will also tend to be impatient, and of course, the obvious one will be fatigue. Now, there is always this word that you hear when it comes to rest. Sleep, rest. It's something called melatonin. Now, how much of you on the training here tonight is familiar with the word melatonin? You could just put it in the chat, just say me, and let me see exactly what we're working with. So while you're doing that, let me give you a quick breakdown of melatonin, right? This is going to be the basis of what we're going to use here this evening. So melatonin is a natural hormone, and in fact, I could probably bring it up for you. I want you guys to, there are some of these things I want you to take a snapshot of, because we are learning, and we have to do this in a fast or short time that is normally allotted for this. So let me bring it up here for you. So it says, melatonin is a natural hormone. So right off the bat, we know that melatonin is a hormone. Now, before we continue, what else was a hormone that we learned on Tuesday? We thought it was a vitamin, but it is actually a hormone. What is it? Vitamin D. That is correct. I have mommy in the audience here, so I'm getting some live feedback, right? So vitamin D is a hormone. Melatonin is also a natural hormone that is produced in the brain and then released into the bloodstream. So we learn about melatonin. This is the hormone that induces sleep. Where is it produced? In the brain, right? It is produced in the brain. Now, what activates melatonin? So let's dig some more. Darkness prompts the pineal gland, and that's in the brain again, to start producing melatonin, while light causes that production to stop. As a result, melatonin helps to regulate circadian rhythm, that's the time when we go to sleep and wake up, and synchronize our sleep-wake cycle with day and night. In doing so, it facilitates and transitions to sleep and promotes consistent quality rest. Now, there are some things that we're going to dive into. So, it is produced in the brain. It goes to the parts of the body via the bloodstream. There is an activation for melatonin. What is that activation? When the place is dark. When light comes on, it obviously reverses the effect. Now, let's take a trip with us in our time machine. We're going about 20 years back. No, 20 years. I'm still a big man at 20 years. Yes, we got to go further than that. Let's go 50 years back. We went 50 years back. In most countries represented here on this session tonight, our foreparents would have go to sleep pretty much shortly after the sun went down, because there wasn't much available artificial lights, electricity and those sort of stuff. And they would have waken up either slightly prior to sunrise or after sunrise or around sunrise, right? So naturally, their bodies would have been in sync with the sunlight, and they would have also had that natural melatonin production. Come back to our time. We're back in the time machine, and we are back in our 2024. There is a substantial amount of artificial light. So right now I'm talking to you, you can see my face lit. I have a backlight there, ring light. We also have the electricity on here. We have street lights as we go outside, and then we have our smartphones, which all has light. Now, how has this advancement in technology, which was intended to facilitate more activity in the night, affected our sleep patterns? So if you remember this, according to this, and let me see if we could highlight it here. It says, right, as a result, melatonin helps regulate the circadian rhythm and synchronize our sleep-wake cycle with night and day. So the original setup, we always got to go back to the manufacturer, was that when the sun goes down, the body goes down. When the sun comes up, the body comes up. That was the original cycle. And that was intended to continue throughout the entirety of human beings' life, right? And we would promote consistent quality rest. Now that we have all of these artificial lights, we are seeing a disruption in the normal sequence. So when the sun goes down, the electricity kicks in. As a result, light remains, and that light is now hitting our pineal gland, telling us that it is not night yet. What happens when it is bright? The melatonin is not released. So as a result, you are finding more and more persons, maybe even you yourself, suffering with insomnia. Or sometimes you say, you heard about the times to go to sleep early. But it doesn't matter, you can lie down in your bed and you're rolling, you're tossing, and you're turning. Why? The original setup was based on consistency. Night comes on, body goes down. Day starts, body wakes up. But now that we break that pattern, we have set a new model in our brain. So even though we try to break that model, you will find that the body resists because that is not the pattern that has been set. Now, is it impossible? Obviously not. And as we go on tonight, you will see that it is not impossible to break that pattern. Right? So we're building. Now, we continue merrily along. We are continuing this thing merrily along. Now, melatonin can also be triggered by certain foods. We still learn about melatonin. And here's an interesting thing. Ladies, especially ladies, because ladies always seem to be obsessed with anti-aging. Melatonin actually slows the aging process. If you find persons who work consistent night shift, you will see one of the things that they start to look older. They start to have more gray hair. So in our industry again, in the airline industry, sometimes you check in for work at 12, not in my airline, but in some other airlines, you check in for work at 12 a.m. Flying through the night, you're still getting your required amount of rest, but it is now being changed from the normal pattern. So when it is night, you are working. When it is day, you are sleeping. And you will tend to find that pilots tend to get gray fast. Even I myself, I find I getting gray, some gray beads here. I'm not too happy about that. But that was back in the days when I used to work hard. Okay? So I'm trying to now come in alignment with the laws of health. And with melatonin as well, as we learn with vitamin D, it actually declines with age. So you would find that, and let me just show you this graph, right? Let me just show you this graph, and you would understand why your baby does sleep for the whole day, as if there's no concern in the world. And then as you mature, your requirements for sleep goes down. So here you see newborns produce minimum melatonin, right? And then as they go, that is newborn, they just came out the womb, right? That is why they're waking up every 3 hours crying. Eventually, as they start to go into 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you see a rapid, not a gradual, look at the graph, you see a rapid increase in the melatonin production. So that is why babies could stay asleep for hours, wake up, eat, and go right back to sleep. Now that is important because during sleep, they release something called growth hormone, which is responsible for them growing fast, right? It peaks in early childhood, and then in puberty it is still high, which is why teenagers could sit in the room and sleep all day, right? And then as you start to break like 20s, 30s, it starts to drop off. And there's a massive drop off after 20 to 30. If you notice that massive spike coming down. And then as you go down, 40, 50, 60, 70, it drops really, really low. Which you find like your grandmother and so used to go to sleep and wake up early, like minimum sleep they're operating on, and they seem fine. You try the same thing and you are lethargic for the whole day. So this is the reason here is that melatonin decreases with age. So it will then help us to realize that the reason for it also, if you think about it, remember when you go to sleep, you also reduce growth hormone. As you reach, like we say, your 50, 60, 70, you are no longer growing, right? So there's not much need for that growth hormone to be released. That's one. And then also you are now winding down, or should be winding down in the years. As a result, the demands on your body should not be as high, naturally. Now, melatonin also has the ability to suppress tumors, right? A study was actually done in Denmark, and what you guys are going to see, right, is that all of these laws help sometimes the same disease. So we saw pure air could trigger blood pressure to lower. We saw that sunlight could actually reduce the development of breast cancer, colon cancer, and some other cancers. And now we are seeing that sleep via the production of melatonin actually shows that females. Let me just read this again. Studies in Denmark and the US show that for females, its lack increases. So by increasing melatonin, you reduce breast cancer, colon cancer, and prostate cancer. If you do not have much melatonin, for breast cancer it goes up by 50 to 55%. For colon cancer it goes up by 45 to 50%, and for prostate cancer it goes up by 45 to 50%. So you are seeing a lot of these laws of health, as we call them, the 8 doctors, working synergistically to ensure that we are experiencing a disease-free body, right? So another thing that you will notice with the melatonin too, melatonin actually helps to lower cholesterol. So diet helps to lower cholesterol, right? The food that we eat helps to lower cholesterol, but melatonin also helps to lower cholesterol, and by as much as 40%. Also, melatonin reduces blood pressure, and I'm sure you could see that why. If you are highly stressed or your blood pressure levels are high and you get high quality sleep consistently, it would obviously help to lower your blood pressure. Now, what else does melatonin do? And as we go through these things, let's just back them up a bit. So we see that melatonin, we could replace that with sleep. Sleep helps to lower your risk of colon, breast cancer, prostate cancer. Sleep helps to lower cholesterol. Sleep helps to lower blood pressure. Sleep for our ladies, especially over 40, menopausal, helps to lower osteoporosis and bone degenerating diseases. Now, once you break 50, you are susceptible to osteoporosis. But by sleeping and melatonin being released, it increases calcium absorption. It also lower levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, right? And all of these things, when they are high, could destroy your bone health. So you guys are beginning to get a very close picture as to how this melatonin, how this sleep really helps to improve your health, right? So what we are going to see here, we already are familiar with the benefits. We are familiar with the benefits of melatonin, right? We are familiar with the benefits of melatonin and how it affects sleep. Now, what we need to find out is, for those of us who are struggling with poor sleep, for those of us who are battling with insomnia, what is the cause of this? And let's look at some of them. Let's first of all look at the cause, and then we'll go and work intelligently to affect a solution so that you can actually improve your sleep, right? Now, cause, top of the list, is stress. Obviously, if you're stressed out, your body is wired all the time for fight or flight, so that will also inhibit the production of melatonin. The opposite of melatonin, the sleeping hormone, is cortisol, which is the waking hormone, and they work in synergy with each other. So when melatonin is high, cortisol will tend to be low. So when the body releases melatonin, body saying, hey guys, let's get ready to go to sleep, cortisol will start to fall. Now, as the morning hours come on, the cortisol levels will start to increase and the melatonin levels will start to go down. I should have a chart showing this, right? I think I have it here. Let me just show you what that looks like. Now, this is important for us to understand, right? Because if you understand this setup, you will see why some things could be inhibiting your ability to sleep. So the red line, everybody see in the chart, the red line, that is the melatonin, and the black line, that is the cortisol. So let us start from the morning. We're going from about 5:30 a.m. So at 5:30 a.m., we see that melatonin drops off significantly. So the chart goes like this, whoosh. At the same time, we see that cortisol is shooting up. Why? Because it is telling the body, get ready to wake up. So it's shooting, this is your fight or flight hormone, right? It is getting the body wired up because it also produces energy or signals for energy production. It is telling the body, get ready to raise up, right? And that is the cycle you're seeing. Now at about 9, 10:30, you see that cortisol falls off, while at the same time melatonin stays slow, which is why sometimes mid-morning you feel a little bit drowsy, right? So when break time, you want to take a break too, right? That could be part of the reason why. Now, as you move closer to 6 p.m., we're talking about sunset in most countries, you'll see a rapid drop off of cortisol. It drops off rapidly, and as where the blue line is, where that blue shade is, that is where night is coming on. You see a rapid increase of melatonin. So that's now telling the body to go and sleep. And once they work like this, your body is functioning properly. But sometimes we could, by our lifestyle choices, affect this normal pattern. First is stress. So when you're stressed out, which hormones, and you're going to put it in the chat. Let's engage. Taking an engagement break now. So cortisol, this is the stress hormone, fight or flight. Melatonin, this is the relaxing hormone. When you are stressed out, which of these hormones do you think you are firing? Which of these you are producing the most of? Put it in the chat. We should have some background music to play in the meantime. I don't even have any background music. Right? So go ahead, I'm going to give you guys a minute or two. Put it in the chat and tell me which of these you will be producing when you are stressed out. So go ahead, put it in the chat. This is not one of those sit down and listen classes, right? I want you to engage with me. So I'm going to give you a minute or two. When you are stressed out, Carol, Marilyn, Natasha, Alma, Khalees, Jillian, Latoya, which of these hormones would be highest? Cortisol or melatonin? Go ahead, put it in the chat. Okay, now the answers are coming up. They're coming up one by one. Excellent, excellent. They're coming up one by one. Let me give you guys a minute. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead, put it in the chat, put it in the comments. Which of these will be highest? Okay, great. So everybody agrees unanimously that cortisol, which is the stress hormone, will be highest. And I 100% agree. Now, what do we say cortisol does? Does cortisol promote sleep, or does cortisol disrupt sleep? Obviously, cortisol disrupts sleep. So when you are stressed, you are firing cortisol, which is definitely disrupting your sleep. So you can see right off the bat when you are stressed out why you are not going to sleep properly, right? And we'll go into stress another time. I'll probably leave that for our lecture tomorrow on abstemiousness. And next one, caffeine. Now, caffeine, in whichever format it comes, in Rockstar, Red Bull, Village Ram, what else is there? Monster. Fat burning supplements, a very hidden source of caffeine, by the way. Fat burning supplements. Pay attention if you take fat burning supplements. Pre-workouts, all these have caffeine. Now, guess what caffeine does? Caffeine not only raises cortisol, but it actually cuts melatonin in half for 6 hours. So if you want to go to sleep, and by the way, caffeine will involve, what else have caffeine? Coffee, cappuccino have caffeine in it, right? Yeah, I think cappuccino, because cappuccino is coffee and something mixed together. I think so, yeah. All right, we'll research that for the next class. So when you take caffeine, it cuts melatonin, the sleep hormone, in half for up to 6 hours. So if you took a pre-workout, or you took a fat burner, or you drink some coffee, Red Bull, energy drinks at 3 p.m., it means your melatonin production, which should have been kicking in at about 7 p.m. when the place gets dark, is cut in half for 6 hours, which means up to 9 o'clock, you haven't even started producing what you're supposed to be producing yet. Right? Now, here's the next one. I know we are all law-abiding Christian people here, but we still got to put it, because when you go out and teach, you need to teach this. Alcohol consumption. I know we have good Christian people here who don't consume alcohol, but you're teaching it, so you'll be able to teach it. So alcohol consumption. Now, what are some hidden sources of alcohol? Let me give you some hidden sources of alcohol. Apple cider vinegar, mustard. What else? Mayonnaise. Anything that has vinegar or vinegar byproducts in it, those are hidden sources of alcohol, because vinegar is really alcohol twice fermented. Okay? So tobacco as well. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Right? Those could be like what you use during asthma attacks. Beta and calcium channel blockers. These will be people who want blood pressure lowering medication, statin drugs, anti-anxiety or sleeping aids, excessive intake of vitamin B12, right, and antidepressants. So these are some of the things that would actually reduce your melatonin production. Okay, so by using some of these, you could actually reduce your body's normal melatonin production. So now that we know how to reduce our melatonin production, let's now focus on the solution. So, first one is bright light. Earlier and later in the day stimulates serotonin. Now, serotonin is also a feel good hormone. So, you want to, of course, when the sun comes up, you want to be out there taking in some of that, let some of that bright light hit your eyes. So that sunlight hits, not the sunlight directly, but the light from the sunlight hit your eyes, right? So we already know by staying in sunlight, we boost our vitamin D3, which has all of the benefits we spoke about yesterday. But it also helps to re-regulate our circadian rhythm. And this is especially important if you travel through time zones. So if you travel through time zones, when we used to go to train, we used to do training for one of the aircrafts in France, in Toulouse. And Toulouse was 5 hours ahead of us. And what we had to do to get our bodies in alignment with that time zone. So if it is 5 hours, it means that when it is 9 o'clock here, right? When it is 9 o'clock here in the Caribbean, it is 1 a.m. in Toulouse. And what used to happen, you used to want to go to sleep based on your old time zone. So your body will normally go to sleep based on your old time zone. But what we had to do when we get into Toulouse, we used to get into Toulouse at 3 p.m., which would have been 8 p.m. our time. So by 4 5, which is Toulouse time, let me make sure I have that right here. No. I do it wrong. So we used to get into Toulouse at 3 p.m., which would have been 10 a.m., 10 a.m. our time, because we're 5 hours behind. In the Caribbean, we're 5 hours behind, right? When it is 10 o'clock in Toulouse time, 10 o'clock p.m., it is only 5 p.m. in your old time, where you came from in the Caribbean. So you are wide awake, right? And you would stay up, or you would naturally want to stay up until it is 10 p.m., which in Toulouse time would be 5 hours, 2 a.m. And you would go to sleep at that time. Now, when you wake up, you would realize that half of the year is already gone in Toulouse. Because if you wake up at 7 a.m., that is 12 p.m. in Toulouse, right, in France. So what we had to do, whenever we go into France, we used to have to fight sleep and wait until it is the sleeping hours in Toulouse. So if it is 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., that's the time you normally go to sleep. When it's 10 p.m. in Toulouse, you go on your bed, you lie down, and just wait for the sleep to come. The first 2 days used to be really tough, right? It used to be really tough because your mind is telling you what you're supposed to do, but your body is on a different channel. And then when it is waking up time, you wake up with the sun in Toulouse. Eventually, after about 2 to 3 days, again, it depends from person to person, your body will sync with that Toulouse time. So even though you just came out from a place that is 5 hours behind, your body will fall in sync with that Toulouse time, and it will be easier to transition. Now you can see how challenging this could become when you have 7 a.m. classes in Toulouse, which will be what time in your body? 5 minus 7, 2 a.m. So your body is 2 a.m., but it is 7 a.m. and you used to see why people used to fall asleep in the training, right? So that is how they taught us. After we did a couple of times, they taught us exactly how to do it. When you get in Toulouse, match your body to Toulouse as fast as possible, right? So if you guys travel time zones, there's a trick of the trade. Okay. Now, so we talk about the some of the things to get our melatonin back up in gear, and these are some natural ways. Now, first of all, we want to spend time in the sun, of course, bright hours, so that our eyesight or our pineal gland could come back in alignment with the natural cycle for which we are in. The next thing we want to do is avoid bright lights at night. Now, of course, I am speaking to you right now and I'm violating that law, right? So you're going to give coach an exemption. You're going to give coach an exemption. We're going to teach. I couldn't teach you earlier, right? So what bright lights does, as we mentioned before, it actually stimulates the production or retards the production of melatonin. So you will not want to sleep. And you want to ensure that you're not sleeping with no night light. You know, sometimes persons have like a lamp there. Any sort of light that is turned on would actually disrupt the melatonin production. So when you go to sleep, you want to make sure that room is dark. And as a result, that will cause you to induce a deeper sleep. And next thing, I'm showing you how to boost in melatonin naturally, how to sleep better. And next thing you want to do is to avoid watching TV, especially like those flashing lights too late at night. In some persons, those flashing lights was able to produce photosensitive epileptic seizures, right? So, you know, when you watch it, and if you want to see the TV flash, just turn the lights, all the lights off in the room, and then watch the backlights. Just watch how the walls go in. And that is exactly what your eyes are seeing. So that flickering light could actually throw off your sleep, right? And next one, of course, we have to touch on it is exercise. So physical exercise can actually naturally boost melatonin levels, which is why if you find you can't sleep, and I've heard a lot of my clients mention this, if you can't sleep, by just joining a workout program or just working out, you would find that your sleep naturally improves, right? Because it helps to boost melatonin levels. The temperature. So if the room is hot, it's very hard to sleep. So we talked about earlier pure air, opening the windows, making sure there's a proper circulation of pure air coming in the room. That will help to control the temperature. Also, fill the room with pure air, and that would help the body to induce a deeper level of sleep. Now, what about foods? Are there some foods that could actually help with the production of melatonin? And for this one, I'm going to share my screen because I want you guys to have all of these snapshots so that when you go and you start helping people, you will be able to have something to reference back to. Okay? So here are some of the foods. Let me give this screen a minute to line up. Barley, banana, tomatoes, ginger, rice, corn, oats, right? And tryptophan is just one of the ingredients that is used to make serotonin and also melatonin. So whole milk, black eyed peas, almonds, sesame seeds, gluten flour, pumpkin seeds, blackstrap molasses. We're going down. If you guys want me to go back so you can take your snapshots, let me know, right? Lima beans, lentils, walnuts, banana again, sesame seed, artichoke hearts, sweet bell peppers, right? So what you are noticing about all these foods, all of these foods are also whole foods. You see nothing tall, like chicken breasts. We ain't get into that yet. I ain't telling you to stop eating meat. I'm just showing you. Remember we talk about the original plan. We talk about going back to the basics, going back to the manufacturer. So if you notice, all of these are whole foods, right? All of these are whole foods. All of these are plant-based foods. Now, boom, boom, boom. Right. So you guys have that. We're moving along. We're moving along. Another thing that actually helps to raise melatonin, and this one is really interesting, is fasting. So fasting actually raises the production of melatonin outside of the pineal gland. And this actually happens in the intestine. So what does that mean in real life? Normally said the melatonin is produced up here in the brain, right? When you fast, you have a next source of melatonin that is turned on in the intestines. So when you go into even intermittent fasting, which some persons do, that actually helps to improve the melatonin production. And that is through another pathway. Okay? So just something else that I thought I'll put out there and help you guys with that. And next thing, eating. So if you eat after 6 p.m., again, I guilty of that. I tell you that right off the bat, I was guilty of that tonight. I was trying to rush to eat to come down here. So I'm guilty of that again. If you eat after 6:30 p.m., the production of melatonin stop in the gut, right? So that is why we normally recommend that you eat at least 3 hours before bedtime. And we assume that most persons go to sleep between 9 to 9:30. So 3 hours before, they will put you at about 6:30. And that will help with the production of melatonin, right? And also you want to make sure it's a light meal, so it's easy to digest as well, and that will prevent the digestive system from being overloaded. Okay? Now, what else can we do to increase the melatonin? Now, this one is going to be tough. You want to, as much as possible, avoid taking your problems to bed. So, you know, something bothering you, and the last thing in your mind before you go to sleep. Now, of course, I know it is tough, but I'll give you some solutions spiritually. What happens when you take these burdens to bed? When we talked about cortisol cutting the ability to sleep, your body cannot differentiate between real stress and perceived stress. So if you go outside and a dog is rushing to attack you, your body is going to perceive it as stress. It's going to dump cortisol so your body could get away from it. Now, if you are home or you lie down in the bed and you're just thinking about the dog attacking you, the exact same production sequence will take place. Or you're thinking about that loan you have to pay or can't pay, or that bad situation that happened throughout the day, or that boss in the back, your body does the exact same thing as if there's a real threat in front of you. So by just doing that, it actually disrupts your sleep. Now, the best thing to do, guys, I would say is As the Bible says, cast all your cares upon him, for he cared for us. Pray, engage the Lord. Engage the Lord. I know it is easier said than done from experience, but sometimes you just gotta pray. And let me just even go a step further. When you pray, pray out loud. If you really want some burdens to be lifted off, just pray out loud. Go in the closet, as the Bible say, and just talk to God like we would be talking if we were having a conversation face to face. I have found that when I pray out loud and I talk, as opposed to just praying in my mind, when it just by just the fact of talking to God, like verbally expressing it, it takes a lot of that burden off. Sometimes after I finish talking, I don't even feel the burden again. Right? So that is just something I thought I'd put out there. That works for me, so I thought it might also work for you. Okay? So that is something that you can do that would actually help. Of course, I don't need to say don't drink caffeine, don't drink alcohol or these stimulating beverages before bedtime, right? So I won't need to say that. I think that should be pretty straightforward. Now, how much sleep do you need? Well, let's look at the different the different levels. So if a newborn baby, they need 16 to about 20 hours of sleep. I do it to the baby could sleep all day. All the babies can sleep. Young children, and these need about 10 to 12 hours of sleep, right? So don't have your children up on tablets after 9, 10, playing video games, and you have to wake up for 5 o'clock to go to school. Send your children when the sun go down or shortly thereafter to sleep so that they can get the 10 to 12 hours of sleep. 12 hours sleep is like from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's 12 hours. 10 hours will be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if your child not getting those hours of sleep, you are doing more harm than good. Don't kill up doing no homework, right? The homework don't fall, don't get tired and don't get sick. But the child will get tired and the child will get sick. For adults like us, we need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep, right? And there's a massive study that shows that the more quality sleep you get, the longer your life will tend to be. So if you want to lengthen your life, lengthen your sleep, right? I just thought I'd just put that out there. Now, as we mentioned, we look about that. Let me just tell you guys quickly before we before we um before we get to wrap this up, a couple things that you could do, right? And you may want to take a note of this. When you are, let's say you want to go to sleep for 9 a.m., 9 p.m., you want to start to go in and lie down in your bed before that. So you want to go in like 8:45. And when you go into your bed, you're not going with your you're not going with your phone to check what's happening on Facebook or trending on Instagram. You just go in, you're gonna lie in the bed and do nothing but prepare to sleep. Don't carry no book to read. Don't try and catch up on no paperwork. Don't watch your phone, nothing. And next thing that you don't want to do is TV in the bedroom. But again, most persons probably don't have TV in the bedroom because they have the phone, right? So it comes back to the same thing. Develop some bedtime routines. So bedtime routines would be things like, okay, before you go to bed, you do this, maybe brush your teeth, maybe read your Bible, say your prayers, and then lie down. Develop a consistent bedtime routine and stick to it. That will help. We are creatures of habit. So we can actually create our result by changing the habits. We can actually change the habits we want or create the habits we want. So by doing something overnight, it becomes a habit, and then you could find yourself falling into that. There are some teas that could induce sleep. Hops tea is one of them. Here in the Caribbean, soursop tea does a great job at inducing sleep. Rosemary tea also works for some persons, right? Trumpet bush tea. That one will put you in some deep dreams. But when I find a trumpet bush tea, you will feel sleepy the day after as well. So it works better for cough, like if you have coughs and so. But trumpet bush tea, you have some extremely vivid dreams, right? Chamomile tea is also one. Valerian root. I'm calling all these names. If I'm going too fast, you all say, Coach, you're going too fast, and I'll slow it down, right? Um, right. I think that's about all I remember in terms of the teas, right? So those will actually help you to induce a deeper level of sleep. And in terms of herbs, well, of course, the valerian root can also be taken in capsules. And St. John's wort, that's a natural antidepressant. So if you're struggling with like anxiety and that kind of stuff, St. John's wort, that would actually help to calm you down so that you can go into a deep level of sleep. Okay. Now, we do not recommend taking melatonin supplements because it could actually disrupt your own natural production of melatonin. Okay. So that's just something I thought I'll put out there. So now we have seen that the importance of sleep, and we want to ensure that we get that sleep so that we can recharge. One thing I just saw in my notes, let me put it out there. The most helpful position in sleep is on the right side because it avoids pressure upon the heart. So this is something here, a new one again. when you guys are sleeping, if possible, sleeping on your right side, like this side, will actually help to reduce the pressure on the heart. Okay, so if you can, depending on your condition, that would definitely be something you'd want to add there. Okay, so we have seen the importance of sleep. We want to recharge our bodies. We want to turn on those cancer fighting, tumor reducing, memory enhancing benefits that we gain from sleep. So if you find yourself struggling to sleep, try some of these remedies that we just mentioned above. You know what I mean? Developing a bedtime routine, staying away from all of the artificial lights, definitely your phone. Your phone sometimes have something called a blue light filter, if you could put that on. Some of them you could set them to automatically come on when the sun goes down, and that would actually help to increase the melatonin production, right? Even if you have to use a phone still. So if you have to use a phone, then the blue light filter is something you want to consider putting on. You want to make sure you develop a bedtime routine. When it's time to go in bed, leave everything outside the bed that doesn't belong in the bed. So your books, your cell phone, Instagram, your homework, all that stuff, leave that outside. And maybe start being a little bit more active. So developing some exercise program, you could just be walking so that now you can help to boost that melatonin production. Stay away from those energy drinks, stay away from caffeine and its various forms, right? And if you have to use the herbs, soursop leaf, as we mentioned, hops tea, chamomile, rosemary, valerian root, just to name a few. Okay? And by applying these, you will be able to see some benefits in your sleep. And when you go out, when you start to meet with people, when you start to talk with people, you're somebody suffering depression, you always want to pay attention to two things: how much sleep you're getting and how much sunlight you're getting. Because both of these two things will actually boost serotonin. Now, serotonin is a feel good hormone. So typically, persons who are going through depression will have low serotonin levels. The natural ways to boost it is by spending time in the sun and by sleeping. So if you're somebody suffering with depression, you want to know, for example, how much time is spending in the sun, how much time is sleeping. If you hear somebody always getting like respiratory issues, what sort of environment do they live? Do they live in the town? Do they live in the city? Is there waste in terms of like humus, compose around the house? Are they living in a low-lying area where it's like a dumpy wall? Is there mold in the room? All the sort of stuff like this. And you don't have to go and ask if there's mold in the room, but you could find out where they live. If somebody tell you live close to the road, you know right off the bat. And now what I'm doing here is showing you guys when you ask any questions, what you are doing, you are trying to see which of the laws of health may be in violation that is causing the condition. So if somebody's living close to the road, what is one thing that's always on the road? Vehicles. What do vehicles let out? Exhaust. And that exhaust is always coming into their house, and that is obviously going to affect their respiratory system. It's going to raise their inflammation, which will cause mucus, which could, in extreme cases, cause shortness of breath, wheezing, asthma, etc. Right? So these are the questions you want to start asking. A lady tell her, listen, my bones, I'm always suffering with fractured bones, etc. You want to know how much time you spend in the sun. Why? Because vitamin D helps calcium to be absorbed. So if they're not spending no time in the sun and they're not using a vitamin D3 supplement, obviously the bones will always be weak, right? Also, as we mentioned here, sleep would also help with reducing the risk of osteoporosis. So when you ask these questions and when we do the questionnaire, you will see we actually go through the questions in the assessment based on the laws of health. So where do you live? You're trying to find out if that person is getting pure air, right? What is the job like? You're trying to find out if that person is an abstemious person, if that person is getting rest, and if that person is getting sunlight. Because if somebody is a teacher, you know, for example, they're going to be indoors from 9 to 3, which is when the highest and most beneficial sunlight rays are exposed. So you may have to consider getting them out in the sun, or in worst case scenario, getting them on a D3 supplement. Okay? So I'm just showing you how all of this thing will come together. And I'm just showing you that when you go out there, I don't want to just give you these lectures and teach you. You have to be able to apply them. And the best place to start applying them in your own life. When you apply them in your own life and you see the work, you will go out with more confidence to help other people. So we're going to bring this thing to the wraps now. We'll continue again tomorrow. We'll have a different presenter tomorrow, and we'll be doing abstemiousness. And that is a very exciting topic as well. So guys, keep coming on. You're going to be learning some stuff. Make sure and take your notes. If you want to go back and watch this, it is on the YouTube channel. the Fit My YouTube channel, so you can go back there, you can watch it, and make sure that you gain all of the information from there. Make your notes that when you are presented with different conditions, you will not fear, you will not tremble, but you will use the same pattern, knowing that disease and effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from the violation of the laws of health. You will go on the laws of health, you will see where the violations are, and you will then go to help persons reverse it. Alright, so take care, have yourselves a great night. It was great having you all. Mom is to tell you guys bye bye. She just went up as well. And I will see you guys on our next lecture, which will be tomorrow at 7:30, right after the Sabbath begins. Take care now, and bye.